Tom was now quite amphibious. You do not know what that means? You had better, then, ask the nearest government pupil teacher, who may possibly answer you smartly enough. Thus, amphibious, adjective, derived from two Greek words, amphi, a fish, and bios, a beast. An animal supposed by our ignorant ancestors to be compounded of a fish and a beast, which, therefore, like the hippopotamus, can't live on the land and dies in the water. However that may be, Tom was amphibious, and what is better still, he was clean. For the first time in his life, he felt how comfortable it was to have nothing on him but himself, but he only enjoyed it. He did not know it or think about it, just as you enjoy life and health, and yet never think about being alive and healthy, and may it be long before you have to think about it. He did not remember having ever been dirty. Indeed, he did not remember any of his old troubles, being tired or hungry or beaten or sent up dark chimneys. Since that sweet sleep, he had forgotten all about his master and Harthover Place and the little white girl and, in a word, all that had happened to him when he lived before, and what was best of all, he had forgotten all the bad words which he had learned from Grimes and the rude boys with whom he used to play. That is not strange, for you know, when you came into this world and became a land baby, you remembered nothing, so why should he when he became a water baby? Then have you lived before? My dear child, who can tell? One can only tell that by remembering something which happened where we lived before, and as we remember nothing, we know nothing about it, and no book and no man can ever tell us certainly. There was a wise man once, a very wise man, and a very good man, who wrote a poem about the feelings which some children have about having lived before, and this is what he said. Our birth is but a sleep and a forgetting, the soul that rises with us, our life's star, hath elsewhere had its setting, and cometh from afar, not in entire forgetfulness, and not in utter nakedness, but trailing clouds of glory do we come from God who is our home. There, you can know no more than that, but if I was you, I would believe that, for then the great fairy Science, who is likely to be queen of all the fairies for many a year to come, can only do you good and never do you harm, and instead of fancying, with some people, that your body makes your soul, as if a steam engine could make its own coke, or, with some people, that your soul has nothing to do with your body, but is only stuck in it, like a pin into a pincushion, to fall out with the first shake, you will believe the one true. Orthodox, inductive, rational, deductive, philosophical, seductive, logical, productive, irrefragable, salutary, nominalistic, comfortable, realistic, and on all accounts to be received doctrine of this wonderful fairy tale, which is that your soul makes your body, just as a snail makes his shell. For the rest, it is enough for us to be sure that whether or not we lived before, we shall live again, though not, I hope, as poor little heathen Tom did, for he went downward into the water, but we, I hope, shall go upward to a very different place. But Tom was very happy in the water. He had been sadly overworked in the land world, and so now, to make up for that, he had nothing but holidays in the water world for a long, long time to come. He had nothing to do now but enjoy himself and look at all the pretty things which are to be seen in the cool, clear water world where the sun is never too hot and the frost is never too cold. And what did he live on? Watercresses, perhaps, or perhaps water gruel and water milk. Too many land babies do so likewise, but we do not know 1/10 of the water things eat. so we are not answerable for the water babies. Sometimes he went along the smooth gravel waterways, looking at the crickets which ran in and out among the stones, as rabbit do on land. He climbed over the ledges of rock and saw the sandpipes hanging in thousands, with every one of them a pretty little head and legs peeping out. Or he went into a still corner and watched the caddises eating dead sticks as greedily as you would eat plum pudding, and building their houses with silk and glue. Very fanciful ladies they were. None of them would keep to the same materials for a day. One would begin with some pebbles, then she would stick on a piece of green wood, then she found a shell and stuck it on too, and the poor shell was alive and did not like at all being taken to build houses with. But the caddis did not let him have any voice in the matter, being rude and selfish, as vain people are apt to be. Then she stuck on a piece of rotten wood, then a very smart pink stone, and so on, till she patched all over like an Irishman's coat. Then she found a long straw, 5 times as long as herself, and said, "Hurrah! My sister has a tail, and I'll have one too," and she stuck it on her back, and marched about with it quite proud, though it was very inconvenient indeed. And at that, tails became all the fashion among the caddis baits in that pool, and they were at the end of the long pond last May, and they all toddled about with long straws sticking out behind, getting between each other's legs and tumbling over each other, and looking so ridiculous that Tom laughed at them till he cried, as we did. But they were quite right, you know, for people must always follow the fashion, even if it be spoon bonnets. Then sometimes he came to a deep still reach, and there he saw the water forests. They would have looked to you only little weeds, but Tom, you must remember, was so little that everything looked 100 times as big to him as it does to you, just as things do to a minnow who sees and catches the little water creatures which you can only see in a microscope. And in the water forest he saw the water monkeys and water squirrels. They all had 6 legs, though. Everything almost has 6 legs in the water, except efts and water babies, and nimbly enough they ran among the branches. There were water flowers there too, in thousands, and Tom tried to pick them, but as soon as he touched them, they drew themselves in and turned into knots of jelly. And then Tom saw that they were all alive, bells and stars and wheels and flowers of all beautiful shapes and colours, and all alive and busy, just as Tom was. So now he found that there was a great deal more in the world than he had fancied at first sight. There was one wonderful little fellow too, who peeped out of the top of a house built of brown bricks. He had 2 big wheels and one little one, all over teeth, spinning round and round like the wheels in a thrashing machine, and Tom stood and stared at him to see what he was going to make with his machinery. And what do you think he was doing? Brickmaking. With his 2 big wheels, he swept together all the mud which floated in the water. All that was nice in it he put into his stomach and ate, and all the mud he put into the little wheel on his breast, which really was a round hole set with teeth, and there he spun it into a neat, hard, round brick. And then he took it and stuck it on top of his house wall, and set to work to make another. Now, was not he a clever little fellow? Tom thought so, but when he wanted to talk to him, the brickmaker was much too busy and proud of his work to take notice of him. Now you must know that all things under the water talk, only not such a language as ours, but such as horses and dogs and cows and birds talk to each other. And Tom soon learned to understand them and talk to them, so that he might have had very pleasant company if he had only been a good boy. But I am sorry to say he was too like some other little boys, very fond of hunting and tormenting creatures for mere sport. Some people say that boys cannot help it, that it is nature, and only a proof that are originally descended from beasts of prey. But whether it is nature or not, little boys can help it, and must help it, for if they have naughty, low, mischievous tricks in their nature, as monkeys have, that is no reason why they should give way to those tricks like monkeys, who know no better. And therefore they must not torment dumb creatures, for if they do, a certain old lady who is coming will surely give them exactly what they deserve. But Tom did not know that, and he pecked and hulked the poor little water things about sadly till they were all afraid of him and got out of his way, or crept into their shells, so he had no one to speak to or play with. The water fairies, of course, were very sorry to see him so unhappy, and longed to take him and tell him how naughty he was, and teach him to be good, and to play and romp with him too, but they had been forbidden to do that. Tom had to learn his lesson for himself, by sound and sharp experience, as many another foolish person has to do, though there may be many a kind heart yearning over them all the while, and longing to teach them what they can only teach themselves. At last, one day, he found a cadis and wanted it to peep out of his house, but its house door was shut. He had never seen a cadis with a house door before, so what must he do, the meddlesome little fellow, but pull it open to see what the poor lady was doing inside. What a shame! How should you like to have anyone breaking your bedroom door in to see how you looked when you were in bed? So Tom broke to pieces the door, which was the prettiest little grating of silk, stuck all over with shining bits of crystal, and when he looked in, the cadis poked out her head, and it had turned into just the shape of a bird's. But when Tom spoke to her, she could not answer, for her mouth and face were tied up in a new nightcap of neat pink skin. However, if she didn't answer, all the other cadises did, for they held up their hands and shrieked like cats in Struwelpeter. "Oh, you nasty, horrid boy! There you are at it again!" And she had just laid herself up for a fortnight's sleep, and then she would have come out with such beautiful wings and flown about and laid such lots of eggs, and now you have broken her door. And she can't mend it because her mouth is tied up for a fortnight, and she will die. Who sent you here to worry us out of our lives? So Tom swam away. He was very much ashamed of himself, and felt all the naughtier, as little boys do when they have done wrong and won't say so. Then he came to a pool full of little trout, and began tormenting them and trying to catch them, but they slipped through his fingers and jumped clean out of water in their fright. But as Tom chased them, he came close to a great dark hover under an alder root, and out flourished a huge old brown trout 10 times as big as he was, and ran right against him and knocked all the breath out of his body. And I don't know which was the more frightened of the two. Then he went on, sulky and lonely, as he deserved to be, and under a bank he saw a very ugly, dirty creature sitting, about half as big as himself, which had 6 legs and a big stomach, and a most ridiculous head, with 2 great eyes and a face just like a donkey's. "Oh," said Tom, "you are an ugly fellow, to be sure," and he began making faces at him, and put his nose close to him, and hallooed at him like a very rude boy. But when, hey presto, all the thing's donkey's face came off in a moment, and out popped a long arm, with a pair of pincers at the end of it, and caught Tom by the nose. It did not hurt him much, but it held him quite tight. "Yeah! Oh, let me go!" cried Tom. "Then let me go," said the creature. "I want to be quiet. I want to split." Tom promised to let him alone, and he let go. "Why do you want to split?" said Tom. "Because my brothers and sisters have all split and turned into beautiful creatures with wings, and I want to split too." Don't speak to me. I am sure I shall split. I will split." Tom stood still and watched him, and he swelled himself and puffed and stretched himself out stiff, and at last, crack, puff, bang, he opened all down his back, and then up to the top of his head, and out of his inside came the most slender, elegant, soft creature, as soft and smooth as Tom, but very pale and weak, like a little child who has been ill a long time in a dark room. It moved its legs very feebly, and looked about it, half ashamed, like a girl when she goes for the first time into a ballroom, and then began walking slowly up a grass stem to the top of the water. Tom was so astonished he never said a word, but he stared with all his eyes, and he went up to the top of the water too, and peeped out to see what would happen. And as the creature sat in the warm bright sun, a wonderful change came over it. It grew strong and firm. The most lovely colours began to show on its body, blue and yellow and black, spots and bars and rings. Out of its back rose 4 great wings of bright brown gauze, and its eyes grew so large that they filled all its head and shone like 10,000 diamonds. "Oh, you beautiful creature," said Tom, and he put out his hand to catch it, but the thing whirred up into the air and hung poised on its wings a moment, and then settled down again by Tom, quite fearless. "No," it said, "you cannot catch me. I am a dragonfly now, the king of all the flies, and I shall dance in the sunshine and hawk over the river and catch gnats and have a beautiful wife like myself. I know what I shall do. Hurrah!" And he flew away into the air and began catching gnats. "Oh, come back, cried Tom. "You beautiful creature, I have no one to play with, and I am so lonely here. If you will but come back, I will never try to catch you." "I don't care whether you do or not," said the dragonfly, "for you can't. But when I have had my dinner and looked a little about this pretty place, I will come back and have a little chat about all I have seen in my travels. Why, what a huge tree this is, and what huge leaves on it." It was only a big dock, but the dragonfly had never seen any but little water trees, stalwart and milfoil and water crowfoot and such like, so it did look very big to him. Besides, he was very short-sighted, as all dragonflies are, and never could see a yard before his nose, any more than a great many other folks who are not half as handsome as he. The dragonfly did come back and chatted away with Tom. He was a little conceited about his fine colours and his large wings, but he had been a poor, dirty, ugly creature all his life before, so there were great excuses for him. He was very fond of talking about all the wonderful things he saw in the trees and the meadows, and Tom liked to listen to him, for he had forgotten all about them, so in a little while they became great friends. And I am very glad to say that Tom learned such a lesson that day that he did not torment creatures for a long time after. And then the caddises grew quite tame and used to tell him strange stories about the way they built their houses and changed their skins and turned at last into winged flies, till Tom began to long to change his skin and have wings like them some day. And the trout and he made it up, for trout very soon forget if they have been frightened and hurt. So Tom used to play with them at hare and hounds, and great fun they had, and he used to try to leap out of the water, head over heels, as they did before a shower came on, but somehow he never could manage it. He liked most, though, to see them rising at the flies as they sailed round and round under the shadow of the great oak, where the beetles fell flop into the water, and the green caterpillars let themselves down from the boughs by silk ropes for no reason at all, and then changed their foolish minds for no reason at all either, and hauled themselves up again into the tree, rolling up the rope in a ball between their paws, which is a very clever rope dancer's trick, and neither Blondin nor Leotard could do it, but why they should take so much trouble about it, no one can tell, for they cannot get their living as Blondin and Leotard do, by trying to break their necks on a string. And very often Tom caught them just as they touched the water, and caught the alderflies, and the caperers, and the cock-tailed duns and spinners, yellow and brown and claret and grey, and gave them to his friends the trout. Perhaps he was not quite kind to the flies, but one must do a good turn to one's friend when one can. And at last he gave up catching even the flies, for he had made acquaintances with one by accident, and found him a very merry little fellow. And this was the way it happened, and it is all quite true. He was basking at the top of the water one hot day in July, catching duns and feeding the trout, when he saw a new sort, a dark grey little fellow with a brown head. He was a very little fellow indeed, but he made the most of himself, as people ought to do. He cocked up his head, and he cocked up his wings, and he cocked up his tail, and he cocked up the two whisks at the tail end, and, in short, he looked the cockiest little man of all little men. And so he proved to be, for instead of getting away, he hopped upon Tom's finger, and sat there as bold as 9 tailors, and he cried out in the tiniest, shrillest, squeakiest little voice you have ever heard, "Much obliged to you indeed, but I don't want it yet." "Want what?" said Tom, quite taken aback by his impudence. "Your leg, which you are kind enough to hold out for me to sit on. I must just go and see after my wife for a few minutes. Dear me, what a troublesome business a family is, though the idle little rogue did nothing at all but left his poor wife to lay all the eggs by herself. When I come back, I shall be glad of it, if you will be so good as to keep it sticking out just so." And off he flew. Tom thought him a very cool sort of personage, and still more so when in 5 minutes he came back and said, "Ah, you were tired of waiting. Well, your other leg will do as well." And he popped himself down on Tom's knee and began chatting away in his squeaking voice. "So, you live under water? It's a low place. I lived there for some time, and was very shabby and dirty. But I didn't choose that should last, so I turned respectable, and came up to the top, and put on this grey suit. It's a very business-like suit, you think, don't you?" Very neat and quiet indeed," said Tom. "Yes, one must be quiet and neat and respectable, and all that sort of a thing for a little when one becomes a family man. But I'm tired of it, and that's the truth. I've done quite enough business, I consider, in the last week, to last me my life. So I shall put on a ball dress, and go out and be a smart man, and see the gay world, and have a dance or two. Why shouldn't one be jolly if one can?" "And what will become of your wife?" "Oh, she is a very plain, stupid creature, and that's the truth, and thinks about nothing but eggs. If she chooses to come, why she may, and if not, why I go without her, and here I go." And as he spoke, he turned quite pale, and then quite white. "Why, you're ill," said Tom, but he did not answer. "You're dead," said Tom, looking at him as he stood on his knee as white as a ghost. "No, I ain't," answered a little squeaking voice over his head. "This is me up here, in my ball dress, and that's my skin. You could not do such a trick as that." And no more Tom could, nor Houdin, nor Robin, nor Frickel, nor all the conjurers in the world, for the little rogue had jumped clean out of his own skin, and left it standing on Tom's knee, eyes, wings, legs, tail, exactly as if it had been alive. "Huh," he said, and he jerked and skipped up and down, never stopping an instant, just as if he had Saint Vitus's dance. "Ain't I a pretty little fellow now?" And so he was, for his body was white, and his tail orange, and his eyes all the colours of a peacock's tail. And what was the oddest of all, the whisks at the end of his tail had grown 5 times as long as they were before. "Ah," said he, "now I will see the gay world. My living won't cost me much, for I have no mouth, you see, and no inside, so I can never be hungry, nor have the stomach ache neither." No more, he said. He had grown as dry and hard and empty as a quill, as such silly, shallow-hearted fellows deserve to grow. But instead of being ashamed of his emptiness, he was quite proud of it, as a good many fine gentlemen are, and began flirting and flipping up and down and singing, "My wife shall dance, and I shall sing, so merrily pass the day, for I hold it for quite the wisest thing to drive dull care away." And he danced up and down for 3 days and 3 nights, till he grew so tired that he tumbled into the water and floated down. But what became of him, Tom never knew, and he himself never minded, for Tom heard him singing to the last as he floated down, "To drive dull care away, eh." And if he did not care, why, nobody else cared either. But one day, Tom had a new adventure. He was sitting on a water lily leaf, he and his friend the dragonfly, watching the gnats dance. The dragonfly had eaten as many as he wanted, and was sitting quite still and sleepy, for it was very hot and bright. The gnats, who did not care the least for their poor brother's death, danced a foot over his head quite happily, and a large black fly settled within an inch of his nose, and began washing his own face and combing his hair with his paws. But the dragonfly never stirred, and kept on chatting to Tom about the times when he lived under the water. Suddenly, Tom heard the strangest noise up the stream, cooing and grunting and whining and squeaking, as if you had put into a bag 2 stock doves, 9 mice, 3 guinea pigs, and a blind puppy, and left them there to settle themselves and make music. He looked up the water, and there he saw a sight as strange as the noise, a great bull rolling over and over down the stream, seeming one moment of soft brown fur, and the next of shining glass, and yet it was not a bull, for sometimes it broke up and streamed away in pieces, and then it joined again, and all the while the noise came out of it, louder and louder. Tom asked the dragonfly what it could be, but of course with his short sight he could not even see it, though it was not 10 yards away. So he took the neatest little header into the water and started off to see for himself. And when he came near, the bull turned out to be 4 or 5 beautiful creatures, many times larger than Tom, who were swimming about and rolling and diving and twisting and wrestling and cuddling and kissing and biting and scratching in the most charming fashion that ever was seen. And if you don't believe me, you may go to the zoological gardens, for I am afraid that you won't see it nearer unless, perhaps, you get up at 5 in the morning and go down to Cordery's Moor and watch by the great withy pollard which hangs over the backwater where the otters breed sometimes, and then say if otters at play in the water are not the merriest, lithest, gracefulest creatures you ever saw. But when the biggest of them saw Tom, she darted out from the rest and cried in the water language sharply enough, "Quick, children, here is something to eat indeed," and came at poor Tom, showing such a wicked pair of eyes and such a set of sharp teeth and a grinning mouth, that Tom, who had thought her very handsome, said to himself, "Handsome is that handsome does," and slipped in between the water lily roots as fast as he could, and then turned round and made faces at her. "Come out," said the wicked old otter, "or it will be worse for you." But Tom looked at her from between 2 thick roots and shook them with all his might, making horrible faces all the while, just as he used to grin through the railings at the old women when he lived before. It was not quite well bred, no doubt, but you know, Tom had not finished his education yet. "Come away, children," said the otter in disgust. "It is not worth eating after all. It is only a nasty eft, which nothing eats, not even those vulgar pike in the pond." "I'm not an eft," said Tom. "Eft have tails." "You are an eft," said the otter very positively. "I see your 2 hands quite plain, and I know you have a tail." "I tell you I have not," said Tom. "Look here," and he turned his pretty little self quite round, and sure enough, he had no more tail than you. The otter might have gotten out of it by saying that Tom was a frog, but like a great many other people, when she had once said a thing, she stood to it, right or wrong. So she answered, "I say you are an eft, and therefore you are, and not fit food for gentlefolk like me and my children. You may stay there till the salmon eat you." She knew the salmon would not, but she wanted to frighten poor Tom. "Ha! They will eat you, and we will eat them." And the otter laughed such a wicked, cruel laugh, as you may hear them do sometimes. The first time that you hear it, you will probably think it is bogies. "What are salmon?" asked Tom. "Fish, you eft, great fish, nice fish to eat. They are the lords of the fish, and we are the lords of the salmon." And she laughed again. "We hunt them up and down the pools and drive them up into the corner, the silly things. They are so proud, and bully the little trout and the minnows till they see us coming, and then they are so meek all at once, and we catch them, but we disdain to eat them all. We just bite out their soft throats and suck their sweet juice. Oh, so good!" And she licked her wicked lips, and then throw them away and go and catch another. "They are coming soon, children, coming soon. I can smell the rain coming up off the sea, and then hurrah for a fresh and salmon and plenty of eating all day long." And the otter grew so proud that she turned head over heels twice, and then stood upright, half out of the water, grinning like a Cheshire cat. "And where do they come from?" asked Tom, who kept himself very close, for he was considerably frightened. "Out of the sea, eft, the great wide sea, where they might stay and be safe if they liked. But out of the sea the silly things come into the great river down below, and we come up to watch for them. And when they go down again, we go down and follow them, and there we fish for the bass and the pollock, and have jolly days along the shore, and toss and roll in the breakers, and sleep snug in the warm dry crags. Ah, that is a merry life too, children, if it were not for those horrid men." "Oh, what are men?" asked Tom, but somehow he seemed to know before he asked. "Two-legged things, eft, and now I come to look at you, they are actually something like you, if you had not a tail." She was determined that Tom should have a tail. "Only a great deal bigger, worse luck for us, and they catch the fish with hooks and lines, which get into our feet sometimes, and set pots along the rocks to catch lobsters. They speared my poor dear husband as he went out to find something for me to eat. I was laid up among the crags then, and we were very low in the world, for the sea was so rough that no fish would come in shore. But they speared him, poor fellow, and I saw them carrying him away upon a pole. He lost his life for your sakes, my children, poor dear obedient creature that he was." And the otter grew so sentimental, for otters can be very sentimental when they choose, like a good many people who are both cruel and greedy and no good to anybody at all, that she sailed solemnly away down the burn, and Tom saw her no more for that time. And lucky it was for her that she did so, for no sooner was she gone than down the bank came 7 little rough terrier dogs, snuffing and yapping and grubbing and splashing in full cry after the otter. Tom hid among the water lilies till they were gone, for he could not guess that they were the water fairies come to help him. But he could not help thinking of what the otter had said about the great river and the broad sea, and, as he thought, he longed to go and see them. He could not tell why, but the more he thought, the more he grew discontented with the narrow little stream in which he lived, and all his companions there, and wanted to get out into the wide world, and enjoy all the wonderful sights of which he was sure it was full. And once again he set off to go down the stream, but the stream was very low, and when he came to the shallows he could not keep under water, for there was no water left to keep under. So the sun burned his back and made him sick, and he went back again and lay quiet in the pool for a whole week more. And then, on the evening of a very hot day, he saw a sight. He had been very stupid all day, and so had the trout, for they would not move an inch to take a fly, though there were thousands on the water, but lay dozing at the bottom under the shade of the stones, and Tom lay dozing too, and was glad to cuddle their smooth, cool sides, for the water was quite warm and unpleasant. But toward evening it grew suddenly dark, and Tom looked up and saw a blanket of black clouds lying right across the valley above his head, resting on the crags right and left. He felt not quite frightened, but very still, for everything was still. There was not a whisper of wind, nor a chirp of a bird to be heard, and next to a few great drops of rain fell plop into the water, and one hit Tom on the nose and made him pop his head down quickly enough. And then the thunder roared, and the lightning flashed, and leapt across the Vendale and back again, from cloud to cloud and cliff to cliff, till the very rocks in the stream seemed to shake, and Tom looked up at it through the water, and thought it the finest thing he ever saw in his life. But out of the water he dared not put his head, for the rain came down by buckets full, and the hail hammered like shot on the stream, and churned it into foam, and soon the stream rose and rushed down higher and higher, and fouler, full of beetles and sticks and straws and worms and addle eggs and woodlice and leeches and odds and ends and omnium gatherums, and this, that, and the other, enough to fill 9 museums. Tom could hardly stand against the stream, and hid behind a rock, but the trout did not, for out they rushed from among the stones, and began gobbling the beetles and leeches in the most greedy and quarrelsome way, and swimming about with great worms, hanging out of their mouths, tugging and kicking to get them away from each other. And now, by the flashes of the lightning, Tom saw a new sight, all the bottom of the stream alive with great eels turning and twisting along, all downstream and away. They had been hiding for weeks past in the cracks of the rocks and in the burrows in the mud, and Tom had hardly ever seen them except now and then at night, but now they were all out and went hurrying past him so fiercely and wildly that he was quite frightened, and as they hurried past he could hear them say to each other, "We must run! We must run! What a jolly thunderstorm! Down to the sea! Down to the sea!" And then the otter came by with all her brood, twining and sweeping along as fast as the eels themselves, and she spied Tom, and she came by and said, "Now is your time, Eft, if you want to see the world. Come along, children, never mind those nasty eels. We shall breakfast on salmon tomorrow. Down to the sea, down to the sea." Then came a flash, brighter than all the rest, and by the light of it, in the 1,000th part of a second, they were gone again. But he had seen them, he was certain of it, 3 beautiful little white girls with their arms twined round each other's necks, floating down the torrent as they sang, "Down to the sea, down to the sea." "Oh, stay! Wait for me!" cried Tom, but they were gone. Yet he could hear their voices clear and sweet through the roar of thunder and water and wind, singing as they died away. "Down to the sea, down to the sea," said Tom. "Everything is going to the sea, and I will go too. Goodbye, trout." But the trout was so busy gobbling worms that they never turned to answer him, so that Tom was spared the pain of bidding them farewell. And now, down the rushing stream, guided by the bright flashes of the storm, past tall birch-fringed rocks, which shone out one moment as clear as day, and the next were dark as night, past dark hovers under swirling banks, from which great trout rushed out on Tom, thinking him to be good to eat, and turned back sulkily, for the fairies sent them home again with a tremendous scolding for daring to meddle with a water baby, on through narrow strids and roaring cataracts, when Tom was deafened and blinded for a moment by the rushing waters. Along deep reaches, where the white water lilies tossed and flapped beneath the wind and hail, past sleeping villages, under dark bridge arches, and away to the sea. And Tom could not stop, and did not care to stop. He would see the great world below, and the salmon, and the breakers, and the wide, wide sea. And when the daylight came, Tom found himself out in the Salmon River. And what sort of a river was it? Was it like an Irish stream, winding through the brown bogs, where the wild ducks squatter up from among the white water lilies, and the curlews flit to and fro, crying, "Tully weep, mind your sheep"? And Dennis tells you strange stories of the Paistamore, the great bogey snake which lies in the black peat pools among the old pine stems, and puts his head out at night to snap at the cattle as they come down to drink. But you must not believe all that Dennis tells you, mind, for if you ask him, "Is there a salmon here, do you think, Dennis?" "Is it a salmon thin, your honour mains?" "Salmon? Cartloads it is of thin and ridgemans, shouldthering ache out of water, have ye but the luck to see him. Then you fish the pool all over and never get a rise." "But there can't be a salmon here, Dennis. And if you'll but think, if one had come up last tide, he'd be gone to the higher pools by now." "Sure thin, and your honour's the through fisherman and understands it all like a book. Why, you spake as if ye had known the water 1,000 years. As I said, how could there be a fish here at all just now? But you said just now they were shouldering each other out of water." And then Dennis will look up at you with his handsome, sly, soft, sleepy, good-natured, untrustable Irish grey eye, and answer with the prettiest smile, "Sure, and didn't I think your honour would like a pleasant answer?" So, you must not trust Dennis, because he is in the habit of giving pleasant answers. But instead of being angry with him, you must remember that he is a poor Paddy and knows no better. So, you must just burst out laughing, and then he will burst out laughing too, and slave for you, and trot about after you, and show you good sport if he can. For he is an affectionate fellow, and as fond of sport as you are, and if he can't tell you fibs instead, 100 an hour, and wonder all the while why poor old Ireland does not prosper like England and Scotland, and some other places where folk have taken up a ridiculous fancy that honesty is the best policy. Or was it like a Welsh salmon river, which is remarkable chiefly, at least till this last year, for containing no salmon, as they have been all poached out by the enlightened peasantry to prevent the Cry-Thrall Sassenach, which means, you, my little dear, your kith and kin, which and signifies much the same as Chinese fang kui, from coming bothering into Wales with good tackle and ready money and civilization and common honesty and other like things of which the Chimney stand in no need whatsoever. Or was it such a salmon stream as I trust you will see among the Hampshire water meadows, before your hairs are grey, under the wise new fishing laws, when Winchester apprentices shall covenant, as they did 300 years ago, not to be made to eat salmon more than 3 days a week, and fresh-run fish shall be as plentiful under Salisbury spire as they are in Hollyhole at Christchurch, in the good time coming, when folks shall see that, of all heaven's gifts of food, the one to be protected most carefully is that worthy gentleman's salmon, who is generous enough to go down to the sea weighing 5 ounces, and to come back next year weighing 5 pounds, without having cost the soil or the state 1 farthing. Or was it like a Scotch stream, such as Arthur Clough drew in his body, whereover a ledge of granite into a granite basin the amber torrent descended, beautiful there for the colour derived from the green rocks under, beautiful most of all, where beads of foam uprising mingle their clouds of white with the delicate hue of the stillness, cliff over cliff for its sides, with the rowan and pendant birch boughs. Ah, my little man, when you are a big man, and fish such a stream as that, you will hardly care, I think, whether she be roaring down in full spate, like coffee covered with scald cream, while the fish are swirling at your fly as an oar blade swirls in a boat race, or flashing at the cataract like silver arrows out of the fiercest of the foam, or whether the fall be dwindled to a single thread, and the shingle below be as white and dusty as a turnpike road, while the salmon, huddled together in one dark cloud in the clear amber pool, sleeping away their time till the rain creeps back again off the sea. You will not care much, if you have eyes and brains, for you will lay down your rod contentedly, and drink in at your eyes the beauty of that glorious place, and listen to the water ouzel piping on the stones, and watch the yellow roes come down to drink and look up at you with their great soft trustful eyes, as much as to say, you could not have the heart to shoot at us. And then, if you have sense, you will turn and talk to the great giant of a gilly who lies basking on the stone beside you. He will tell you no fibs, my little man, for he is a Scotchman, and fears God, and not the priest, and, as you talk to him, you will be surprised more and more at his knowledge, his sense, his humour, his courtesy, and you will find out, unless you have found it out before, that a man may learn from his Bible to be a more thorough gentleman than if he had been brought up in all the drawing-rooms in London. No, it was none of these, the salmon stream at Harthover. It was such a stream as you see in dear old Berwick, who was born and bred upon them. A full 100 yards broad it was, sliding on from Broad Pool to Broad Shallow, and Broad Shallow to Broad Pool, over great fields of shingle, under oak and ash coverts, past low cliffs of sandstone, past green meadows and fair parks, and a great house of grey stone and brown moors above, and here and there, against the sky, the smoking chimney of a colliery. You must look at Berwick to see just what it was like, for he has drawn it 100 times with the care and the love of a true North countryman. And even if you do not care about the Salmon River, you ought, like all good boys, to know your Berwick. At least, so old Sir John used to say, and very sensibly he put it too, as he was wont to do. If they want to describe a finished young gentleman in France, I hear they say of him, il se sent Rabelais. But if I want to describe one in England, I say, he knows his Berwick, and I think that is the higher compliment. But Tom thought nothing about what the river was like. All his fancy was to get down to the wide, wide sea, and after a while he came to a place where the river spread out into broad, still, shallow reaches, so wide that little Tom, as he put his head out of the water, could hardly see across. And there he stopped. He got a little frightened. This must be the sea, he thought. What a wide place it is! If I go on into it, I shall surely lose my way, or some strange thing will bite me. I will stop here and look out for the otter or the eels, or someone to tell me where I shall go. So he went back a little way and crept into a crack of the rock, just where the river opened out into the wide shallows, and watched for someone to tell him his way. But the otter and the eels were gone on miles and miles down the stream. There he waited and slept too, for he was quite tired with his night's journey. And when he woke, the stream was clearing to a beautiful amber hue, though it was still very high. And after a while he saw a sight which made him jump up, for he knew in a moment it was one of those things which he had come to look for. Such a fish! 10 times as big as the biggest trout, and 100 times as big as Tom, sculling up the stream past him as easily as Tom had sculled down. Such a fish, shining silver from head to tail, and here and there a crimson dot, with a grand hooked nose, and grand curling lip, and a grand bright eye, looking round him as proudly as a king, and surveying the water right and left, as if all belonged to him. Surely he must be the salmon, the king of all the fish. Tom was so frightened that he longed to creep into a hole, but he need not have been, for salmon are all true gentlemen, and, like true gentlemen, they look noble and proud enough, and yet, like true gentlemen, they never harm or quarrel with anyone, but go about their own business, and leave rude fellows to themselves. The salmon looked at him full in the face, and then went on without minding him, with a swish or two of his tail, which made the stream boil again. And in a few minutes came another, and then 4 or 5, and so on, and all past Tom, rushing and plunging up the cataract with strong strokes of their silver tails, now and then leaping clean out of water and up over a rock, shining gloriously for a moment in the bright sun, while Tom was so delighted that he could have watched them all day long. And at last one came up, bigger than all the rest, but he came slowly and stopped and looked back and seemed very anxious and busy, and Tom saw that he was helping another salmon, an especially handsome one, who had not a single spot upon it, but was clothed in pure silver from nose to tail. "My dear," said the great fish to his companion, "you really look dreadfully tired, and you must not overexert yourself at first. Do rest yourself behind this rock." And he shoved her gently with his nose to the rock where Tom sat. You must know that this was the salmon's wife, for salmon, like other true gentlemen, always chose their lady and love her, and are true to her, and take care of her, and work for her, and fight for her, as every true gentleman ought, and are not like vulgar chub and roach and pike, who have no high feelings and take no care of their wives. Then he saw Tom, and looked at him very fiercely one moment, as if he was going to bite him. "What do you want here?" he said very fiercely. "Oh, don't hurt me," cried Tom. "I only want to look at you. You are so handsome." "Ah?" said the salmon, very stately but very civilly. "I really beg your pardon. I see what you are, my little dear. I have met 1 or 2 creatures like you before, and found them very agreeable and well behaved. Indeed, one of them showed me a great kindness lately, which I hope to be able to repay. I hope we shall not be in your way here. As soon as this lady is rested, we shall proceed on our journey." What a well-bred old salmon he was! "So, you have seen things like me before?" asked Tom. "Several times, my dear. Indeed, It was only last night that one at the river's mouth came and warned me and my wife of some new stake nets which had got into the stream. I cannot tell how, since last winter, and showed us the way round them in the most charmingly obliging way." "So there are babies in the sea?" cried Tom, and clapped his little hands. "Then I shall have someone to play with here. How delightful!" "Were there no babies up this stream?" asked the Lady Salmon. "No, and I grew so lonely. I thought I saw 3 last night, but they were gone in an instant down to the sea. So I went too, for I had nothing to play with but caddises and dragonflies and trout." "Ugh!" cried the lady. "What low company!" "My dear, if he has been in low company, he has certainly not learned their low manners," said the salmon. "No, indeed, poor little dear. But how sad for him to live among such people as caddises, who have actually 6 legs, and nasty things, and dragonflies too. Why, they are not even good to eat, for I tried them once, and they are all hard and empty. And as for trout, everyone knows what they are." Whereon she curled up her lip and looked dreadfully scornful, while her husband curled up his too, till he looked as proud as Alcibiades. "Why do you dislike the trout so?" asked Tom. "My dear, we do not even mention them, if we can help it, for I am sorry to say they are relations of ours who do us no credit. A great many years ago they were just like us, but they were so lazy and cowardly and greedy that instead of going down to the sea every year to see the world and grow strong and fat, they chose to stay and poke about in the little streams and eat worms and grubs, and they are very properly punished for it, for they have grown ugly and brown and spotted and small, and are actually so degraded in their taste that they will eat our children." "And then they pretend to scrape acquaintance with us again," said the lady. "Why, I have actually known one of them to propose to a lady salmon, the little impudent creatures." "I should hope so. I should hope," said the gentleman, "that there are very few ladies of our kind who will degrade themselves by listening to such a creature for an instant. If I saw such a thing happen, I should consider it my duty to put them both to death on the spot." So the old salmon said, like an old blue-blooded Hidalgo of Spain, and what is more, he would have done it too, for you must know, no enemies are so bitter against each other as those are of the same kind. And a salmon looks on a trout as some great folks look on some little folks, as something just too much like himself to be tolerated. And it ends with a poem by Wordsworth. "Sweet is the law which nature brings. Our meddling intellect misshapes the beauteous forms of things we murder to dissect. Enough of science and of art. Close up these barren leaves. Come forth and bring with you a heart that watches and receives."